So, welcome everybody. I think we are ready to start this this side event for the Statistical Commission. I see some participants already coming in. So, if you allow me, let me just get us started. I'm sure some people might be joining in the next few minutes. So greetings to everyone. My name is Luis Gonzalez, and it's my pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of the United Nations Statistics Division and our co-hosts, the World Bank and Paris 21, to this Statistical Commission's side event, which is entitled From COVID-19 Response to NSO Resilience and Preparedness, Lessons from the Survey on the Implementation of the Cape Town Global Action Plan for Sustainable Development Data. So we are honored for the participation of 3 distinguished panelists from Cameroon, the United Kingdom, and the UN Economic Commission for Africa, who my colleague Francois Fontenot from Paris 21 will introduce in a moment after an introductory presentation by Alberto Setza from the World Bank. But before we get started with our agenda for this event, I would like to invite all of us to reflect a little bit on the journey of the 2 last years. Indeed, as many of you may recall, when we met in person for the first session of the Statistical Commission in New York back in March 2019, not for a moment did we imagine that what would be the dimension of the global catastrophe that was about to unravel. And in a matter of weeks, most of the world went into lockdown, and our global statistical community found itself facing its biggest challenge in memory. As the demand for timely, disaggregated, trustworthy data was more critical than ever to save lives and livelihoods, all countries, but especially those in developing regions, had to deal with unprecedented difficulties in carrying out even the most basic and essential statistical activities. And it was in this context that the global statistical community pulled together in many creative ways, supporting each other and stepping up to the challenge, and realizing how important it was to really understand what needs and priorities for support of different national statistical systems across the world were. A truly collaborative effort was started through a series of rapid global surveys, which gave national statistical offices the opportunity to communicate their most pressing challenges to international partners so that we could better identify how to focus and coordinate our efforts to support each other. This event is a good opportunity to look beyond the immediate crisis and to reflect on the insights gained over the last 2 years, including through the most recent survey of NSOs on the implementation of the Cape Town Global Action Plan. And by examining the strategic priorities, resources that are needed, and constraints that national statistical offices face, today we have a much better idea of the degree in which national statistical systems are resilient, fit for purpose, and ready for future challenges. As we move from mitigation of the crisis to recovery efforts with a view to build back better statistical systems that are more resilient to future crises, we look forward to share lessons learned and experiences from country and regional perspectives so we can support smarter, more focused, country-owned investments in statistical capacity going forward, as highlighted in yesterday's high-level event on financing for data and statistics. And so without further ado, I would like to invite my colleague Alberto Setza from the World Bank to give us an introductory presentation. Over to you, Alberto.
Thank you, Luis. Let me share my screen and start the presentation. Okay. Can you please confirm that you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you, Luis. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the session. My name is Alberto Zezza. I'm with the Development Data Group of the World Bank, where I normally work on household surveys. In this case, I'm here today for my role as part of the team that designed and with UNSD first, and then more recently with the addition of colleagues from Paris 21, a series of COVID surveys of National Statistical Offices, and then the recent survey on the implementation of the Cape Town Global Action Plan that Luis was alluding to. So too many people contributed to these efforts to be acknowledged in the short time I have. So I hope you will check out the online publications where everyone is properly acknowledged. I also need to acknowledge, however, the participants to these surveys, the NSOs that took the time to respond to the questions we have submitting to them over the course of 2 years. And also the regional commissions that have been partners since the beginning of this effort. So some background, as Luis was saying. So as you know, the Cape Town Global Action Plan on Sustainable Development Data was launched at the first World Data Forum in 2017. And the plan stemmed from the recognition that the funding of national statistical systems modernization efforts is essential to achieve the goals of Agenda 2030. So the plan identified 6 priority areas that you see on this graph, and that will guide the structure of the presentation. But as Luis was saying, I mean, anything that had plans written on it kind of fell apart when COVID hit, right? So who knew, as Luis said 2 years ago, what we would be going through and the world would be going through. So with this survey now, after 2 years, we're trying kind of get the dialogue back on track from the crisis mode to the longer term against the backdrop of a world that clearly has changed and statistical systems that have changed also due to the impact of the pandemic. So the goal is to take stock of the stated priorities of the National Statistical Offices as they express them in the survey, including again how they've been shaped by the pandemic, and move the dialogue forward. Also, I think the report that came out in January from the survey is timely because it can also inform the work of 2 recent initiatives, the World Bank hosted Global Data Facility and the Bern Network's Clearinghouse for financing development data, which provide unprecedented financial support for the data agenda. So the survey was a web survey. Links were sent to the heads of the NSOs in most cases in August 2021. 101 responses were received, and as I said, the report was published in January, and it's available online. So in the short time I have, I will just highlight some key messages from the reports, focusing on about like 1 for each of these 6 areas. But then, of course, we'll have a discussion afterwards, which will be much richer in terms of guiding a way forward, not only for action, but also we would like to discuss, to start a discussion on the way forward for the future of these surveys of NSOs. So as I said, we did 5 rounds of the surveys, 4 focused on COVID, that were monitoring COVID disruptions, that documented widening inequities in the ability of NSOs to respond, but also they witnessed a great leap in modernization by many NSOs, adoption of new methods, of new data sources, and a very swift ability of NSOs to respond amid all the resource challenges that Luis was also referring to. So responses, as you can see, were kind of good and steady, and so we thank again the NSOs for sticking with us over these 2 years. Now, but let's start with some presentation of the results. So the first area of the city gap is coordination and strategic leadership. And with coordination, that means coordination within and outside of the NSS, the National Statistical System. So here we asked NSOs to report on their perception of their capacity to coordinate with partners. And so we can see that only a few respondents saw no improvements, whereas the vast majority saw some level of improvement, but also an unfinished agenda with more to be achieved, which are the yellow bar in this graph. So you can see this glass is half full or half empty, depending how you look at it. But clearly more efforts are needed in this domain. But on the other end, our NSOs partners provide some signal that things have been changing even during this difficult time. But of course, also the challenges are greater in low and lower middle income countries, and they change with income levels. The second area of the city gap is the innovation and modernization of national statistical systems. Here it is, of course, difficult to write a good question that captures something so complex. One thing we asked was about the existence of a legal framework for data protection, which we think is a feature of a modern national statistical system. And while many have one, about 25% of NSOs in lower middle income countries reporting not having one. And again, we see a divide with high income countries where only 6% said that they don't have one. Similarly, we asked the question about the existence of data confidentiality policies, and the results, the trends were similar, with 29% low-income countries not having one versus 9% in high-income countries. The third area of the city gap is the strengthening of basic statistical activities and programs. And here also similar priorities emerged kind of across the board, with the use of administrative data coming first in terms of priorities. Second, where needs for support to survey programs, whether phone, web, or existing traditional surveys. And third, after the survey, was the use of Earth observation, satellite imagery, and the ability of integrate with traditional data sources. A fourth area of the city gap is the dissemination and use of sustainable development data. Now here, one of the specific questions in the survey looked at needs for capacity development on open data principles. And the compilation dissemination of metadata was the first priority identified by respondents, followed by the development and organization of a national data strategy. Again, as for previous results, you see the gap between high and low income countries, but also kind of an alignment in terms of ordering of the priorities. Going now to the fifth area of the city gap, which refers to multi-stakeholder partnership. The first area that was identified, particularly by low but also by middle income countries, is the capacity to enhance the ability to take advantage of new technology, new methods, and new data sources. So this is clearly identified in this graph, where you see 92, 96%, depending on the income group, identified these as the first area. Of course, I mean, as in most other domains, there will need to be a discussion of what the specifics are in each country. But we do think that this survey is giving us some indication of what priorities are that can help guide future work. Finally, the sixth area is that of resource mobilization. And here, the survey was split in two parts. With one part was only asked to countries that are eligible for IDA financing, which are the ones that kind of by definition are the more in need of external financial support. But also a general question that was asked to all countries was about the identifying their shortages, the areas in which they felt their shortages were greater. And again, for low and middle income countries, financing came out clearly on top. But also software, IT equipment, and where was in high demand, and part of that is of course related to some of the things that were exposed during COVID in terms of shortcoming in technical in ITC infrastructure in all these countries. But also when asked about priorities for the next 3 years for funding, we see the censuses and surveys came out very strong, followed by administrative data. And thematically, unsurprisingly, coming out of the pandemic, health was the top priority identified by 76% of countries. But then there is also a lot of need for support in social protection, education, environmental protection. And again, the individual country strategies will have to go more in depth, but this does provide some indication of where the urgency lies in the community as a whole. Now, to finish, to conclude, I mean, one discussion we would really like to have is also about the future of the survey, right? We would like this to become a regular endeavor, but we are aware of the need to minimize burden while maximizing use value, which is what everyone who is designing a survey needs. It's a balance that we need to find. So we are proposing that to have a survey with the periodicity of once a year, so that then that could be resulting in a report, in an annual report to the UNSC. We could, if needed, add a mid-year round if there is a necessity, for instance, those special topics or something, some events occurs at the global level that calls for an additional survey. We would like to broaden the partnership. As I said, the economic commissions were partners since the beginning, but we think a broader participation in the design of the survey is also going to increase its quality and relevance, and also avoid duplications with other efforts that might be going on. Regional modules might also be a way of capturing needs and priorities that are more specific to each regions. And in terms of thematic coverage, we could stick to the ones in the city gap that are fairly broad, or identify subset that as a community we think are a priority. And finally, we want to reinforce the links to the financing and operations, and in particular to the work of the Global Data Facility and the financing for development, Clearinghouse, so that let's say the priorities are then translated into actual actions and resources being allocated. So we look forward to your feedback and also to a productive discussion after this presentation. Thank you very much.
So
good morning.
Thank you so much, Alberto. Over to you, Francois.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. And thank you very much for being with us today. My name is François Fontenot. I'm the deputy head in the Paris Sentiment Secretariat. I have the pleasure to moderate our next session, which is a panel. We have 3 fantastic panelists today to reflect on our topic of resilience and preparedness of NSOs. So first, let me introduce Mr. Joseph Tedou, who is the Director General of the National Statistical Office in Cameroon. We also have Mrs. Jo Evans, who is working with the UK ONS as the head of the International Collaboration for Health Analysis and Pandemic Insights. And last but not least, we have Mr. Joseph Ilboudou, who's working for the UN Economic Commission in Africa, and who's the Chief Statistical Development, Data Innovation and Outreach Section in the African Center for Statistics. So we will hear from two NSOs in different situations and from a regional partner. They will tell us their own stories on the crisis and their lessons learned. Thank you very much to the three of you for being with us today. So this will be played in two parts. I will have first a series of 2-3 questions for our panelists, and then we will have time for a Q&A session with participants. As you've seen in the chat, we encourage you to type questions, not in the chat, but in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. So we will look at them and prompt your questions to the panelists. So it's your chance to talk to these three distinguished panelists, and please don't be shy. So without further ado, let me maybe start with you, Mr. Tedu, with Cameroon. We just heard from Alberto the key role played by new data sources and new methodologies and technologies in ensuring continuity of statistical activities during the pandemic. Still, we know that many NSOs were not prepared for this, and there is a strong demand from countries for additional support to enable data innovation going forward. So can you tell us how the NSO in Cameroon can benefit from new digital transformation opportunities to produce official statistics?
Thank you very much, François, for giving me the floor. My name is Joseph Tedu. I'm from Cameroon. So let me introduce my intervention by letting you know that following United Statistical Division, at Free State, Cameroon realized the study on the impact of COVID on the activities of the National Statistical Information System in July 2020. Was to know or to appreciate the consequence of the pandemic on the implementation of a work plan. So National Institute of Statistics for Cameroon can benefit from new digital transformation opportunities to produce official statistics by capitalizing on the lesson learned from the survey in our study. These are, let me mention that to capitalize on the experience of new data collection methods, to gradually adopt modern data collection techniques. That means remote data collection for the first time. And our study was realized via internet and telephone. To adopt methods of data collection in at-risk areas and the data estimation in inaccessible areas. To provide the National Institute of Statistics and the National Statistical Information System structures with adequate infrastructure to promote remote work. That means computer, internet connection, and bring them into line with digital modernity. To continue the implementation of statistical information in the sectorial administration, and to strengthen the partnership with company and others of key data sources, including mobile phone companies, electricity, and the water utilities. In addition, the National Statistical System has obviously been tested by various challenges in terms of resources mobilization. The main consequences has been the failure to meet the production schedules, poverty surveys, employment and informal surveys, population census, and the agricultural census. And the other challenge was the incapacity to cover the user's needs. The national priorities are grouped in the National Strategy for the Development of Statistics, covering the period 2021 to 2030. They are being examined for funding from the state budget or from Cameroon's technical and financial partners. A first producer technical financial partnership meeting is planned.
Mr. Tedu, maybe yes. we'll if I may, maybe we'll go into the resources, the financial resources in my next question. Thank you very much for giving us a sense of how the digitalization of the economy of the country present both an opportunity and a challenge in Cameroon. I'll come back to you on the resource specifically. Thank you very much. Maybe going to the UK and Joe, we have heard that the coordination within the national statistical system is not everywhere satisfactory for most NSOs, and especially in low and lower middle income countries. Meanwhile, statistical offices in the poorest countries, the IDA borrowing countries, also expressed demands to support in sectors such as health and climate. This was the last slide from Alberto. Can you maybe give us an example of the ONS taking the role of data steward to respond to the demand for health data while still implementing its core program of work?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right that the findings from your survey ring true with us, that even for us, statistical coordination across the entire system, as my years of experience working on the Sustainable Development Goals tell me, we still haven't got that absolutely right. But in response to the pandemic, one of the first things that we did in ONS was to step up some work that had been planned, but we took this at a much faster pace. So we created something called the Public Health Data Asset. And what we did here is link the data that we had, so the 2011 census, and all of our mortality statistics, because we collect the registrations data, and then link that to data from our public health system, so GP and hospitalization data, for example. And this enabled us to produce insights into risk factors for COVID-19, such as occupational comorbidities, demographic and socioeconomic factors. And then we have added to that data asset, so we have added the vaccine data and the test and trace data. So again, allowing us to keep up with insights as the vaccination took off, looking at effectiveness and take-up of the vaccine. What we've also done with that is to create a slimmed down, functionally anonymized data set and make that available in our secure research environment so that non-government researchers can access that data to do their own analysis. And then, in response to the survey, I mean, it was quickly recognized that with the asymptomatic sort of nature of COVID, that we needed a random sample so that we could understand how this disease was progressing. And sort of this need for unbiased and trusted information, which is something I think, the Statistics Office is well placed to do, led to us developing a COVID infection survey. We actually got this up and running within 7 days, drawing on the experience we already had of running large-scale household surveys. It's not been easy. And we worked really, really closely with academics to understand that, because obviously we didn't have the epidemiological experience to understand the nuances of running that survey. So it was just slightly different to the way we'd already set up the business impact survey, looking at the impact of the pandemic on businesses. But we by working in partnership and by really speeding up those ambitions that we already had, I think it helped us to get into that position where we could respond really rapidly to the changing needs of decision makers, and that's something that we saw throughout the last couple of years, that needs were changing all of the time. But I think it's helped us produce data that has been really foundational for the critical decisions that were taken, for example, on introducing or removing restrictions. And again, data from this survey are made available for accredited researchers in our secure research environment. So we're making sure that it is available for in-depth analysis that perhaps we as the Statistics Office don't have always the time or the resources to do. So yeah, that's what we've been doing.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Joe. Fantastic example of successful data stewardship indeed. Let me go to Joseph Ilbudo from ECA and ask a question on finances. We've seen that many IDA borrowing countries in Africa reported severe shortages in financing resources for their statistical activities. Our own recent estimates in Paris 21 actually show that only 0.34% of ODA goes to development data. So in this context, and looking at the current mechanism of development financing for data and statistics, what do you see as the main challenges going forward?
Thank you very much, moderator. You communicated a number that shocked us, 0.38, isn't it? It looks like it's mainly
even less, 0.34, but we are discussing details here. Absolutely, very low.
As you can see, it looks like a statistical error. And it is a statistical error in all sense of the meaning. And here, of course, the situation is a bit embarrassing because when we look at the result of the census, we felt it. We felt this shortage. And let me go through the main challenge in three areas, which are mainly interlinked. I have an issue of priority setting, issue of political will, and also issue of leadership, and they are interlinked. So when we look at first the priority setting, how comes that when a borrowing mechanism is put in place, at the end of the day, it comes out that there is not enough allocation for statistics. And this is a result immediate from the priority setting. So this is where statisticians do have to really wake up. And I will allude to the leadership aspect on this after. But it means what? Let me tell you frankly, most of the Minister of Finance, if they are not our age mates, they are our younger brothers. But when they come to power and when we discuss with them on the issues, they will tell you, I have conflicting priorities going here and there, many requested of many, on many aspects. So what is the trajectory for statistics in that way? It means that seriously, we need to rebuild that priority setting towards statistics. I think one of our elders was saying that we even need to set for conditionality in statistics when people are going to borrow resources. Maybe we need to go to that level to some extent. But I think the caveat here is when all our ministers of finance all converge to New York for their meeting, please make sure that this thing that we are presenting here is presented to them in one single meeting, so that they will know that here it is not only a national debate, but it is also a global debate on how priorities should be set for statistics. Second aspect is the political will. Where the political will is very strong, we have a strong correlation of consequences and resources for statistics. And we really call for that. And this is linked to the fact that when the data are used, extensively and intensively by the politicians and recognizing the value, then financing the generation of the data goes obviously. National budget will be more open to that, and also mobilization of partnership will be done by national government to facilitate this. To the last point, not to take too much time, on the leadership. Yes, this is very important. Where you have lack of resources, the likelihood of finding statistical leaders that do not know really how to put the things together is very high. And when it is like this, how he can discuss with the Minister of Finance and also other national key stakeholders to convince them that yes, resource for statistics must come from national public budgets and also be consequences. So I think that altogether, these three areas should be put in one single perspective of how to increase the prioritization, how to increase the political will, and how to increase the statistical leadership among the national statistical systems toward financing data for development. And also, as I said, when the system, national system are going to the World Bank, let's make sure that we have done our homework here and there for statistics to be very visible. Thank you very much, moderator.
Thank you very much, Joseph. And just to stress the efforts currently undertaken by many partners, in particular the World Bank, in advocating for greater investment and greater resources. You were calling for meetings to be organized with the ministers. That's actually on the plan for the World Bank spring meetings, where a lot of attention is brought forward. But thanks for articulating the 3 points which are very strategic indeed. Speaking of leadership and resources, I'm going back to Mr. Tedu and Cameroon. You had started to tell us how the NSO in Cameroon was impacted in terms of resource mobilization. So could you please take it where I had to stop you, and apologies for this again. What is the biggest shift according to you since the pandemic, and how has it impacted your program of work in terms of focus and quantity of resources?
Yeah, thank you so much. So how you know, it was not easy to mobilize funds from the set budget and from technical and financial partner of the government. So in terms of resources received by National Institute of Statistics, in order to respond effectively to the pandemic and to meet the urgent and the priority needs of the government and its partners, who has carried out 3 socio-economic studies on COVID, on households, businesses, and the decentralized territorial community, using its available resource and with the financial support of United Nations Development Program, not state budget, as you can notice. These studies were carried out in a context of respect of barrier measures and the social distancing, and not face-to-face as it was in the past. Use the copy and carry new methods. And since then, the National Institute of Statistics has started projects that make greater use of digital transformation. So, with the financial support of the World Bank, for example, we are implementing 2 quarterly panel surveys on households and businesses to appraise the impact of COVID on the households' conditions and the impact on the businesses. In addition, with the General Taxation Directorate, we implement a new project for online filling in the statistical and fiscal declaration by the companies subject to taxation, and an important source of data for statistics and on the situation of companies and the elaboration of national accounts. In terms of workload, impacts are a sudden increase in workload without a significant increase in human resources and the financial capacity. Major changes in the working arrangement and condition, such as teleworking or partial inactivity, especially in a context where access to digital technology is not guaranteed for all, was also implemented. That means that it was not easy to work. That's the reason that I say that was not incapacity to meet with the needs of users from the government and the partners. We are continuing to work hard to see how we can be in capacity to do it in the next years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tedu. And we can't agree more to the fact that it's complex and complicated. I'd like just to mention the efforts we are doing together with you with the Table Ronde des Bailleurs, which will be coming very soon in Cameroon.
Yes, we are organizing with support of Paris 21, a first producer and technical and financial partner meeting to mobilize more funds to implement our new national strategy for the development of statistics on the period 2021 up to 2030.
Excellent.
We're going to organize it maybe next month, that's in March 2022.
With the minister. Excellent.
Yes.
Thanks for this.
The minister
precisions.
in charge of planning and regional development.
Excellent. Going back to the UK, Joe, and based on your experience at ONS, can you tell us how NSOs can provide support to NSOs in low and lower middle income countries on sectoral statistics? I think you came with a huge experience in sectors. So give us a few ideas on how this can be done.
Yeah, so just a brief overview of what we do. For about 5 years now, we've had an active international development program, so that's funded from the official development assistance budget, and we offer technical assistance and knowledge sharing with other national statistics offices. We actually have some long-term in-depth partnerships. So we have members of staff based over in Rwanda, in Ghana, and in Kenya, and they're based there permanently and work in partnership with those statistical offices. We also have a similar setup. We have a colleague based in UNECA, in Addis, and while our resources are limited, we've learned that by working in this peer-to-peer way, we can share both our technical expertise and some of these softer skills to help our partners make progress against their own goals. But we also have a new project starting, so thinking about particular sectors. And so in addition to this overseas development funded work, we've got a new project where we're looking at the sort of connection between climate change and health statistics. And this is a collaborative project that's going to be supported by funding from an organization called the Wellcome Trust. And the idea is to develop a transparent and a globally generalizable framework and a technical platform for official statistics on climate change, the environment and health, and a set of statistical methods to better estimate climate related health risks using real world data sources, so including local level, modelling local level impacts. We haven't yet confirmed who we're going to be working with, but we will work with at least 2 other National Statistics Offices to develop this framework and platform. And we'll engage with international and regional organisations as well to co-develop these methods so that we're meeting the needs of decision makers in very different environments. And it's the aim of this project to better inform the international community, leading to more effective evidence-based decision making. And I think what we've learned over the years of doing our partnership work is about working in partnership, understanding the different perspectives and the different user needs, and working together to find solutions that do fit both needs. So that's just one example of what we're doing.
Thanks again, Joe. Very interesting, and the word partnership is certainly important when we develop capacities in environments where absorption capacity at times is really a challenge. Going back to you, Joseph Ilboudo, there have been some recent positive developments in terms of making finances available. The numbers are still low, but I think we're pushing in the right direction. For example, the World Bank launched last year a new global fund, the Global Data Facility, and in the chat we have some links to participants to know more about this facility. The Bern Network also launched a platform for more transparency in financing, which is called the Clearinghouse for Financing Development Data. So these are 2 initiatives which we believe could help countries mobilize more and better funding. What do you think? How do you see those 2 initiatives helping, and how do they relate to your 3 priorities you mentioned before?
Thank you very much, moderator. And I salute here these 2 great initiatives, being the Clearinghouse for Financing Development Data and the World Bank Global Data Facilities. I think they are very instrumental and very important. I will come to that very soon on the development of financing perspective. And first of all, the Clearinghouse is really the space where we can see a lot of information being publicized, being the demand side or being the supply side, and also countries to recognize the efforts and also partners to see where are the needs. And I think this is very instrumental. I will come to that when the regional perspective is concerned. And going to the World Bank Global Data Facilities, we really appreciate the way it is structured and the areas it is laying on. Mainly, when we look at the data system modernization, it is an area that is speaking to our regional perspective because as you have seen, the Cape Town Action of Plan is insisting on that. And also COVID came and tell us, if you don't modernize, I will kill you. So that's why we really think that this is the way to go. And the way the system is structured to look at the global, regional, and national perspective of financing is good. We already see at the regional level in Africa that regional economic communities are being empowered to work in that perspective of the global, the World Bank Global Data Facilities. Some of the data, I will not name them here, start making arrangement. So when we see that, we see the likelihood of Africa to shine in terms of mobilizing resources is not very high, because if the regional economic communities are involved, they are playing key roles on their different member states. And also if at the national level, the system is made so that whatever need on data is properly articulated around the areas of work that the World Bank is proposing. And equally, the information is also known on the clearance perspective. it is good. And all these are issues that will help prioritizing the issues of, on the issue of prioritizing, but also on the issues of leadership, because the statistical office will have now to go more and more to the perspective of presenting the need, and to the perspective of meeting stakeholders, and to the perspective of convincing national entities on the necessity on financing the statistical operation. And I will say that the Economic Commission for Africa is putting in place a perspective of helping the member state to implement modernization plan. So this is really going to be instrumental, and the two initiatives here presented will help a lot. And if we put the three issues together, we could say that at toward the end of this year, we will already see the perspective of modernization in many national statistical systems where the issues are still not being developed. So I would say that congratulations for these initiatives, and also we are ready and stand really ready, as I say, to work with World Bank, to work with Paris 21, to work with key stakeholders in that perspective toward mobilizing our energy at sub-regional level, at the national level, and at the continental level to strengthen statistics in Africa. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Joseph. You know, those initiatives, and in particular the Clearinghouse, absolutely need some momentum at regional level, and advocacy at regional level is certainly super important to make this additional information impactful on decision making. I have a last question for the three of you. You will remember from Alberto's presentation, we have plans for the future in terms of continuing this survey, this global assessment of the situations and the needs. And you know, normally people like to give pieces of advice and guidance. So I'm going to ask you for one advice from you to us on how we can make this survey potentially even more useful. So useful for you, for your organization, or for the countries you work with. It happens Cameroon and the UK both participated in the surveys, but as Alberto was showing, some countries you know, did not respond to this exercise. So what is your advice looking forward in terms of scoping, sequencing, I mean, anything on this global assessment connection with the national agendas? And I may give it to you, Joe, the privilege to start.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, we're all called Joe, aren't we?
That's a good point, Joe. Honneur aux femmes, Monsieur Teddy. Joe, please, you have the floor. Joe, UK.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm not entirely sure I would know what advice to give you, but just to say that for us it is actually really interesting to see these findings, because particularly they can inform the areas that we then prioritize when we're doing the capacity building work. So we're particularly interested to see the ongoing need for leadership training. This is something that we do quite a lot of, so it's reassuring to us to know that that we're focusing on the right areas, but also interested to see the reflections in the survey about the statistical legal frameworks, and that is an area that we do now plan to prioritize further in our program. So my advice is to keep going, keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tidu, what advice you have for us?
Yeah, thank you. We are going in Cameroon to take advantage of a new legal framework with the new law governing statistical activities adopted by Parliament on July 2020, and is implementing decree signed by the head of state on December 2021. which make the state responsible for the financial of official statistics. So for the next survey to be implemented, Cameroon would like to share the experiences from the other countries in mobilizing financial resources for the production of official statistics by workshop or roundtable to be organized and in the field of advocacy. So I think it will be better for our country to share the good practice in mobilizing financial resources for producing official statistics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph, for your perspective. Can we hear from UNECA on their perspective on this survey, how to reconcile a global approach with the regional priorities, maybe? Joseph?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, moderator. And we see this survey as very instrumental to what we are doing. And really, if you ask us what we would like to see more, is the linkages to the regional thematic and with a regional module. Because as we say, Asia is not suffering in the same ways as Africa or as Northern America and etc. So we would like to zoom on our peculiarities without, taking too much detail onto the survey. But we know when you speak on sub-Saharan Africa, you could have a kind of typology, and if your typology is addressed, you have to address it. So let's look at what could zero into a more specificities that could solve the issue, because the result, the issue is not just to have a global result, because global result could be fine, and if some countries are still suffering, we are leaving some countries behind. So let's look at it very deeply, and also link to action, financing, and operation. I think this is important because, of course, it is not just a matter of saying we are suffering from financial shortages, but what are the key elements of this and how to address it? And I think it is important for the survey to continue, to have this link, and also to request opinions and information on the data clearance aspect, the clearance aspect, because if it is not well, if we think that there is a capacity to build on that sense, then it will be also helping Paris 21 to support actions on that. So in short, as a regional commission, we have regional priorities that we would like to see reflected in that. And as I told you, modernization is one of our key elements. Administrative data, we can't stand without developing administrative data. And this is really one of the answers to the generating of data in Africa. We want to modernize it. We want to modernize the survey undertaking, and also to be IT-centered and digitalize NSOs to respond to that. And we thank ONS UK to be our partners on many aspects. They have an expertise at ECA to help us, and also to help us on statistical leadership. Because as we say, at the end of the day, the leadership is the one that has to change everything. So leading will be the key element. So if the survey can continue on this aspect, it will help us to be more pertinent in our actions. And again, thank you, World Bank, Paris 21, and others for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joseph. And thank you very much to our three panelists. We promised to have a little 10 minutes for a question and answers session with the participants. We received a number of questions. please continue to post your questions for those who have some. I'll go with a first question, and I apologize to my three panelists because that's really live, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spotlight uncomfortable, but you please tell me if you don't want to respond. I have a question on admin data, and I think I'll ask it to Joe from the UK because you gave a very good example. I actually have two questions. One is, what is needed for NSOs to use admin data more? And the other one is, do we see a trend in statistical offices moving to a wider use of alternative data sources, which would include indeed admin data? So if you could share your thoughts on these points with the participants.
Yeah, I think what is needed for us to use more admin data, it comes back to that coordination largely, the putting in place the agreements for how being able to use the data. It can take a very, very long time for us to set up an agreement with another government department, but the sort of wealth of insights that you can get are worth that effort. But it is, I think, a greater understanding of what insights you can get from using this data, understanding it. You really need to work with the two departments closely to understand the limitations to the data, the strengths of the data. So patience is one thing that is needed, but also perseverance, because it does take a long time. But do we see a trend towards using alternative data? Absolutely, we do. I do remember when the SDGs sort of started, and we looked at this idea 5 years ago that we were going to answer all of these indicators with big data or administrative data, data science techniques, and that hasn't happened. That is not how most countries are measuring the statistics. But we are making inroads. We are starting to use new techniques. I think it requires a lot of upskilling, a lot of new training. So I think it's going to take a while, but there is definitely a trend where that is increasing. Yeah, and I think it'll be really useful, really useful. So one of the things I know that we are looking at the moment is, for example, when we measure inflation, we collect lots and lots of price points. We're looking to see if we can get that data directly from the checkouts, from the tills themselves, which will give us millions of price points to work with. And so it's really, really, there are some fantastic opportunities out there, but it's going to take a while to get into that rhythm of using these new data sources.
Excellent, thanks so much, Joe. I have a question on population censuses, and I don't know if Joseph, you would like to give a go at it. The question is, what is the status of the delays of population censuses in ECA countries, and did it have an impact on policy making?
Okay, thank you very much. The delay, as we mentioned, are prioritization of resources, because when the COVID-19 pandemic erupted, we have seen interruption of many censuses because of the orientation of resources, or what the government have promised to put on the table, they couldn't put it anymore because they have to direct it to some health emergencies. So, and we felt it. And of course, you are trying to heal yourself, but at the end of the day, you also need this data from population to, in fact, manage the healing process. So it means what? That notwithstanding, advocacy still need to be increased, so that even by the time of difficulties, we have to undertake the surveys and the censuses. And I'm happy to announce that many countries have now put on the table their census operation perspectives undertaking, and the ECA is assisting with tablet provisioning, with also technicalities on dashboard and etc. And it is going again. So we are recounting ourselves and to make sure that the 2020 round will be successful. So, so this is how we are managing, and we are mindful that, yes, resources are an issue, but it must not stop at this level. It should be, additional efforts should be down to even going through the COVID. We must be able to count ourselves and must be able to provide information on populations.
Thank you very much, Joseph. And maybe a question to, actually two questions to Mr. Tedu from Cameroon. You take the one you feel the more comfortable with, or you can take both if you like. One question is it more difficult now to get funding for data than it was in the SDG era, so 20 years ago? So you might want to share your experience on this one. And the second question is, what are your tricks to demonstrate the value of data to a minister? I think you need 2 hours probably to respond to both questions, but if you had 2 minutes, and what would be your story?
Thank you. For instance, concerning the first question, I would like to take the example of a popular census to say that we have a very big challenge in our country concerning the implementation of census. You know, the third census, general population census, was implemented on 2005. So Cameroon was supposed to implement the fourth and on 2015, but up to now, it's not done. So we have many challenges. The first challenge is the problem of security in some localities. The second is a problem of financing, because the state budget is not enough, and it's very difficult to borrow funds from abroad to finance statistic projects. It's very difficult. But we have chance with opportunity with the World Bank, and maybe next year this census will be implemented. Then to say that it's not very easy in our country to mobilize financial fund for statistic production. So what advocacy to do? The advocacy, I know it's the first thing is to be in capacity to release good information for policy makers. That's the first thing to do. You have to show, you have to demonstrate that it's very useful for the government to have good statistics. And this is not easy to do it. So in Cameroon, we have many projects to improve the quality of statistics, to respect the delay, and to be in capacity to let the parliamentarian to be in contact with National Institute of Statistics to know what we can do for them. We are working with many ministry departments to show that it's very important to have a very good service in charge of statistics. And so it's very important to put means. You can, if you agree with the quality, if you know that it's very important to have indicators for the implementation of a national strategy for the development of a country. So you have to put money to produce good statistics. Then that is our strategy. just to show that it's very important to have a good statistics of the implementation of a macroeconomic and sectorial policies. But it's not easy. In this context, where Cameroon have many challenges. So we have a problem of security and we have a problem to face the pandemic. It's not easy to convince the Minister of Finance to put financial resources in statistics. It's not easy, but we're trying.
And you're trying with good success, Mr. Tedu. I mean, thank you very much for these words of wisdom and reflecting on your long experience navigating through different crises indeed. I'll stop here by thanking you, the three of you, very much on behalf of the co-hosts, UNSD, the World Bank, and Paris Saint-Yvon. It's been a fantastic discussion with you. Thanks for playing the game of the Q&A. And giving the floor back to Luis, I think, for the concluding remarks. So thank you again very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to all our distinguished panelists and to my colleagues Alberto and Francois for this very, very interesting conversation. I just want to wrap up in a minute by trying to reflect on how do we link this very rich discussion with what we have been discussing already in the context of previous side events. As I was mentioning at the beginning, the high-level event we had yesterday on financing for statistics. I think some of the messages that we had there resonate very much with the discussion today. So we reflecting back on that, we understand that donors are looking for ways to better align their financial support with the priorities of national statistical offices to ensure that the international resources are used effectively and have a catalytic effect on the modernization, the mobilization of domestic resources. And that these investments need to be guided by the overarching principles of country ownership, of sustainability, be well coordinated and based on extensive assessment of the country context, so that the interventions and the support that is provided by external partners accurately respond to national priorities. So I think that fits very well with what we've learned today. And one of the main takeaways that I have is that the successful modernization efforts that we've seen in the couple of years that we've been through this new world of the COVID-19 response and mitigation. These efforts did not start from scratch, but they were based on assets that were already available at the country level and had to be further developed in a gradual process. So I think, as our colleague from the UK mentioned, it's not a quantum leap. It's a series of gradual progress that will lead us to take us to this envisioned state of modernization, and also the importance of having priority setting tools for priority setting, tools for advocating for political will and support the leadership of NSOs in coordinating these efforts is very important. So we believe and we hope that the surveys that we've been conducting in partnership with the members of the global statistical community will help in that regard. We take to heart the advice and the guidance that comes from our colleagues at the regional level, at the country level, to improve these efforts to collect the information, the evidence that is needed to better focus investment and capacity development efforts. And I would just like to conclude by inviting all of you who will be taking part of the main sessions of the Statistical Commission to continue the conversation there, to bring in your ideas and advocate for what you need in terms of service and support from the Secretariat and other members of the international statistical community. And we look forward to continue engaging with you in this field. So thank you very much. Thank you again for your time, for your very interesting and illustrative examples. And I hope you have a good rest of your day or a good rest of your evening, wherever you are. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you. It was very, very interesting for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.